So one of the coolest scenes in Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, arguably, well there's plenty. There's several great scenes in this game. But in my opinion, one of its greatest scenes is the failed execution of Ganondorf. A lot of people wonder, why did this happen? Why did he just gain the Triforce of Power at the moment of his execution? Was it, as the sages put it, a divine prank by the gods themselves? Could it have something to do with Demise, who is this ancient demon king of hatred who will reincarnate in the form of a Gerudo every generation or so? A lot of people think, oh, well, Ganondorf always has the Triforce of Power, so, I mean, it makes sense for him to just have it in Twilight Princess. I mean, he had it in Wind Waker, he had it in Ocarina of Time, but I suppose if we wanted to be technical, this execution happens in the child timeline. Most people are familiar with how Zelda has all these different timelines. Basically, the timeline was normal until Ocarina of Time introduced time travel into the lore, and it did what it always does to lores and makes them convoluted. But long story short, the time travel shenanigans that happened in Ocarina of Time resulted in there being 3 timelines that split off. One being where the adult Link defeated Ganondorf in single combat and saved the day, sealing Ganondorf away for seemingly all eternity. This particular Link would return to his own timeline after Ganondorf's defeat, and when Ganondorf revived some generations later, there was nothing to stop him. This allowed him to grow in power unchecked, and eventually wreak total havoc, slaughtering all the sages and just doing all kinds of bullshit, forcing the king to flood Hyrule in an attempt to stop Ganondorf. But Ganondorf survived that too and built a pirate fortress on the Great Sea and did what he did best, which was killing sages. You guys all know Wind Waker. Great game. The other timeline, of course, is the one where Link is defeated, and this leads to the whole downfall timeline. Community fans will probably refer to this as the darkest timeline for sure. But Link is defeated and presumably killed, and the remaining sages manage to seal Ganondorf away. Well, it's becoming a bit of a trend, isn't it? I believe the sages sealed him away in the Sacred Realm, which of course Ganon, being Ganon, turned it into the Dark World, where he would gain a bunch of power and minions and then plot his eventual return to Hyrule. And like always, that worked for a little bit, but speaking of trends, Ganondorf eventually revived under the guise of a mage named Aghanim, where he got up to his old normal brand of fuckery, taking over Hyrule Castle until he was eventually stopped by Link, who had to defeat him in Hyrule and then in the Dark World. You guys all know A Link to the Past, another great game. But that brings us to the timeline we're going to talk about today, the child timeline. This is the one where a child Link warns Zelda and the royal family of Ganondorf's intentions, and he is imprisoned and sentenced to execution for his plot. This Link would then fuck off and have a bunch of fun adventures in Termina, before eventually returning to Hyrule to grow old and bitter and eventually turn into a Stalfos-like wraith that possessed the ability to take the form of a silver one-eyed wolf, either from getting lost in the woods searching for the Kokiri village he grew up in, or something having to do with the fact that he was unable to pass on his skills or truly be a hero in his own time. But I'm getting off subject. So since in this child timeline, Ganondorf never successfully stole the Triforce, why does it randomly appear to him anyway? Now, there's no outright exact answer for this, so I can only really speculate. I've seen some online speculate that this whole thing was a plot from the gods just so that Link and Midna could meet, which seems a little too fanfiction-y for my liking. Some have said that maybe the Triforce is just like this thing that's anchored in all timelines and is always the same, so that since in other timelines Ganondorf was able to acquire the Triforce, that potentially this Ganondorf could use it as well. There's not all that much to back that, though. I think the actual reason for this, how would you put it?
This was divine intervention.
Could have something to do with Ganondorf's motivations to go about conquering Hyrule. And you know, it's not really like Ganondorf had like these super evil intentions, really. I mean, who the fuck knows where all the Gerudo are at in, Twilight Princess. I mean, were they genocided by the Hylians because of Ganondorf's plot? I mean, that's pretty fucked if he got his people genocided, but that would also kind of make more sense for him to be so brutal insane if that's what happened after he got arrested for something that hadn't even happened yet. Well, I guess he was planning, but still. But besides him, there are 0 Gerudo in Twilight Princess, and I find that really interesting, and the cause of a lot of speculation. Well, some people think Telma is one, and I think that's definitely a possibility. Maybe she's half Gerudo, half Hylian, or half Sheikah, maybe. And who the fuck knows if I'm saying that word right, but I tried. But we learn in Wind Waker why Ganondorf attacked Hyrule or planned to usurp Hyrule in the first place, since the one in Wind Waker actually did go through with his plan and succeed for a little bit. But we learn the motivation of why he did what he did, or planned to do what he did in the case of Twilight Princess Ganon. We see history refer to Ganondorf as a king of thieves and a usurper and an evil sorcerer, and those are perhaps all true, but we don't know why he did all this. In Wind Waker, after fighting through Ganondorf's League of Evil style secret lair, he reaches the top of the tower to find a stoic Ganondorf ready to bust out a dope-ass monologue on him. He talks about how his homeland was a great desert and how the winds only really brought death. Whether it was day or night, they brought a burning death during the day or a chilling death during the night. And meanwhile, over in Hyrule, the winds didn't bring death, they brought prosperity, they brought a little bit of relief on a hot day. And understandably so, Ganondorf, as he put it, coveted that wind. He wanted the land of Hyrule for his own people, which thematically is a brilliant contrast to this version of Link being the hero of the winds, sent seemingly out of nowhere to stop him. Either it be fate, as Ganondorf himself says, or coincidence. I mean, the only real reason Link ever even left Outset Island in this game was because his sister got kidnapped, because Ganondorf was looking for Zelda, so he kinda made his own bed with this one. And one thing I never see brought up is the immense amount of pressure Ganondorf must have been under. Only one Gerudo male is born every 100 or so years, and he's instantly named king, and in charge of a whole nation of warrior women. Him wanting a better land for his people and using the most brutal and at times Machiavellian means possible doesn't really justify any of his atrocities, but it does make his cause noble in its own right. And noble enough, I think, for one of the gods to grant him the Triforce of Power at his time of need. I mean, think about it, this Ganondorf never even really got to do anything. He got caught before his plan could ever be enacted. And that also doesn't mean that his intentions changed. He only ever put together his plot to steal Hyrule and provide a better home for his people. Yeah, I know we see what happens in Ocarina after he takes over. It looks like the Redeads have taken over the castle town, and it's just all around fucked everywhere. But all that tells me is that power corrupts, especially after you've, tarnished your morals enough to get to the throne the way he did, all the while engaging in dark magic and sorceries, occult rituals, and the like. Again, I'm not saying he was justified, but I definitely think he's a tad bit more compelling than your average Dark Lord characters or the archetype I see him often associated with. And I think that there's more than enough reason to think that the gods being all about balance while also favoring underdogs could have possibly helped him out here. I mean, like I said earlier, the guy hadn't done anything yet, he had noble intentions, and perhaps one of the gods just wanted to give him a fair one. Although after killing the sage, he was sent to the Twilight Realm, which is kind of hilarious. It's like exactly what they did or prior to A Link to the Past. They sealed him in another dimension and he gained a bunch of power, which is pretty much exactly like what he does in this game. But at that point, what else could they really do? I mean, the guy had the power of the gods. The gods wanting to give Ganondorf a fair one could also be why the sages see it as a divine prank because it was at their expense. I mean, one of their own numbers died because of the gods' machinations, so I think it makes sense why they'd see it that way. And because the sages were just doing their job, just unfortunate pawns in the greater schemes of the gods. So I guess what I'm saying is all three of the possibilities I mentioned could be true. It's all about interpretations. Now, if you're not throwing popcorn at your screen in utter disgust at my last sentence, then thank you for staying with me. There's also a theory that paints Groose as the mysterious third hero, and also as Ganondorf's ancestor, at least on the human side of things. Because as we know, his spirit is just a reincarnation of Demise, the true form of the imprisoned and the final boss of Skyward Sword. And I could talk about this theory all day because I'm really fond of it, but well, no, I probably will make a whole video about this, but not today. But this video wasn't about that, it was just to share some theories I had regarding the failed execution of Ganondorf in Twilight Princess. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Why did Ganondorf survive his execution? Why did the gods help him out? Was it just to give us the coolest scene in Legend of Zelda history? I mean, people always talk about that scene in Infinity War where Thanos says you should aim for the head or whatever. But Legend of Zelda did a way cooler scene than that like 10 years prior or 15 years prior. They fucking wrecked them. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Why did Ganondorf survive his execution? If you liked the video, please like it. If you disliked it, please dislike it. If you like hearing me rant on about random shit involving video game lore and theories, the occasional character video or just that type of thing. I'm gonna do this whole video like 2022 in characters about all my favorite characters of this year coming up at the end of the year. So that's a ways off. Don't know why I mentioned it. But yeah, without further ado, let's have our outro. If you're new here, that's just the soothing sounds of potions brewing in an alchemical lab, whilst a monk meditates solemnly in the distance. Anyway, this video was meant to be like a preview of sorts to when I start covering Zelda lore, because I've been wanting to for a long time. I'm a really big fan of the series, and I recorded this a while ago, so I'm just posting it now because, well, I finally got around to finishing it. But also in the comments, let me know your favorite Legend of Zelda game, because that's always fun. Alright, well, I'll see you all next time. Have a nice rest of your day.